2 jobs, endless bills, and a heart too tired to dream. That was my life until I met him, a millionaire with empty eyes and a broken soul. What he taught me wasn't about money, it was about the true price of love. And it changed everything. Before I tell you how a broken millionaire changed my life forever, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. My story might just save you years of chasing the wrong kind of wealth. I never thought I'd be the type to count pennies at the grocery store, but there I was, scanning price tags, comparing ounces, and silently calculating how much was left in my checking account. $43.27. That had to last 3 more days until payday. I'd been at the hospital since 5 a.m., on my feet for 12 straight hours as a nursing assistant. My back ached, but I couldn't go home yet. My second shift at the downtown bar started in 40 minutes. This was my life. Wake up at 4 a.m., hospital until 5 p.m., bar until midnight, collapse into bed, repeat. Weekends. I picked up extra shifts, vacations, a luxury I couldn't afford to dream about. I was 32 years old, with nothing to show for it except an apartment that was too small and bills that were too big. "You good for closing tonight, Nia?" my manager would ask, already knowing the answer. I'd nod, force a smile, and tie my apron a little tighter. The truth was, I wasn't good. I was exhausted down to my bones, but exhaustion doesn't pay rent. Neither does pride. So I'd serve drinks to people spending my day's wages on a single round, listening to their problems while swallowing my own. The worst part wasn't the physical toll, the swollen feet, the tension headaches, the hands cracked from hospital sanitizer. It was watching life pass by through the windows of places I worked, friends getting married while I picked up holiday shifts, family reunions I missed because I couldn't afford the time off. My mother's voice on the phone, "You're working yourself to death, baby girl." But what choice did I have? My student loans weren't paying themselves, and my younger sister needed help with college. I had this theory back then. Money was freedom. If I just worked hard enough, saved enough, sacrificed enough, eventually I'd break through. I'd have enough cushion to breathe, to live instead of just survive. "Your time will come," I'd whisper to myself on those 3 a.m. bus rides home, too tired to even cry. Just keep pushing. Everyone at both jobs thought I was the strong one, the reliable one. They didn't see me in my car between shifts, scarfing down a protein bar for dinner, sometimes screaming into my steering wheel just to feel something besides numbness. They didn't know I kept a spreadsheet tracking every dollar, watching my debt decrease by painfully small increments each month. 2 steps forward, 1.5 steps back. That Friday night at the bar was particularly brutal. A private party of finance bros, celebrating some market win I couldn't begin to understand. They tipped well, but treated the staff like furniture. As I collected glasses from their table, I overheard one of them, a quiet one, sitting slightly apart from the group. "None of this matters if you've got nobody to share it with," he said, staring into his untouched scotch. His friends laughed it off, but something in his voice caught me. Through his expensive suit and carefully styled hair, I recognized something familiar. The same hollowness I saw in my own eyes every morning. He looked up then, caught me watching him. For a split second, something passed between us. Recognition, maybe. I quickly looked away and continued working. I had no idea that man would reappear in my life 3 days later, or that his broken pieces would somehow help me fix my own. I didn't know yet that everything I believed about success and struggle was about to be turned upside down. All I knew was I had 6 more hours on my feet before I could rest, and tomorrow I'd do it all again. Tuesday night shifts were usually slow at the bar, just a handful of regulars, and the occasional tourist who wandered in from the hotel across the street. I was wiping down the counter, already calculating how many hours of sleep I could get before my hospital shift when he walked in. The quiet man from the finance group, alone this time. He sat at the far end of the bar, away from the other patrons. No flashy watch tonight, no designer suit. Just dark jeans and a simple grey sweater that probably cost more than my rent. Something about him seemed different, unguarded maybe. I approached with my professional smile, the one that hid exhaustion. "What can I get you?" I asked, sliding a coaster his way. He looked up and I noticed his eyes, deep brown with flecks of amber, but so empty, like someone had drained all the light from them. "Just water, please. I don't actually drink." He gestured to the untouched scotch from his last visit. Appearances, you know. That caught me off guard. Rich guys usually loved showing off, ordering the most expensive whiskey just because they could. I served his water with a lemon wedge, expecting him to pull out his phone like everyone else. But he just sat there, watching the condensation roll down the glass. "You looked tired the other night," he said suddenly. "Like I feel all the time." I should have been offended. In customer service, we're supposed to hide our fatigue, our realness. But his honesty disarmed me. No pretense, no flirting, just an observation so accurate it stung. "2 jobs will do that to you," I replied, surprising myself with my candor. "Not all of us can play the market and party on weeknights." He laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face. "Is that what you think I do? Play the market and party?" He extended his hand. "I'm Daniel, and I wasn't partying with those guys. I was working too." I hesitated before taking his hand. "Nia, and forgive me if I don't see how sipping expensive scotch in a private room counts as work. Those men manage my company's pension fund," he said, no defensiveness in his voice. "I have to show up, pretend I care about their golf games and their portfolios. Trust me, I'd rather be anywhere else." I didn't know whether to believe him. His clothes screamed money, but his eyes spoke a different language, one I recognized from my own mirror. For the next hour, as I served other customers, he stayed, occasionally asking simple questions about the neighborhood, the bar, nothing personal, nothing that crossed any lines. As my shift ended, he left a tip that made me uncomfortable, not because it was inappropriate, but because it was exactly what I needed to cover my overdue electric bill, like he somehow knew. "Have a good night, Nia," he said, standing to leave. Then he hesitated. "I own a foundation that provides healthcare for underserved communities. We're having a fundraiser Thursday evening at the Palmer Hotel. We need extra servers. It pays well and there's a bonus." He slid a business card across the counter. "If you're interested." I should have said no. Rich people's charity events were just excuses to feel good about themselves while drinking champagne. But the word bonus echoed in my head. My sister's tuition payment was coming up. "I'll think about it," I said, taking the card. He nodded, no pressure in his gaze. "I hope you do. We need people who understand what it's like to be invisible in a room full of visibility." After he left, I stared at the embossed card. Daniel Harlow, founder and CEO, New Horizons Foundation. I'd expected to feel judged by someone like him, someone who had everything I was killing myself to achieve. Instead, I felt seen. And that was more dangerous than any judgment. I didn't know it then, but that business card was my first step into a world I thought I understood. A world of wealth and privilege that would shatter every assumption I had about money, success, and what it meant to be truly rich or truly broken. The Palmer Hotel was everything I expected. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and people whose watches cost more than my car. I blended in with the other servers in our identical black uniforms, invisible except when someone needed a fresh glass of champagne. Daniel had greeted me briefly when I arrived, looking different in his tailored tuxedo, more like the man I'd first seen at the bar with his finance friends. 3 hours into the event, my feet were screaming in the sensible black heels I'd bought at a thrift store. I was arranging dessert trays when I overheard 2 women in evening gowns. "Such a tragedy about Daniel's wife," one whispered. 5 years now, isn't it? "Cancer. Only 32. They'd just started the foundation together when she was diagnosed. The other shook her head. He's never been the same. I nearly dropped the tray. 32, my age. I glanced across the room at Daniel, watching him shake hands and smile that empty smile I recognized from the mirror. Suddenly, his wealth seemed less like a shield and more like a costume he was forced to wear. After the event, as servers tallied their tips, Daniel appeared in the service area. "Nia, do you have a moment?" He led me to a small office away from the banquet hall. "Thank you for coming tonight. I wanted to give you this myself." He handed me an envelope, my pay plus the promised bonus. I should have just thanked him and left. Instead, I heard myself ask, "Why did you really invite me here tonight?" He looked surprised, then thoughtful. "Honestly, because you looked at me like a person, not a bank account." He gestured to a chair. "Would you like some tea? The real event is over, and I could use a conversation that doesn't involve donation amounts." That night in his office, over paper cups of Earl Grey, I learned who Daniel Harlow really was. Not the millionaire CEO, but the community college kid who'd built a health tech company from nothing, driven by his wife Sarah's passion for healthcare equity. How they'd been high school sweethearts who promised to change the world together. How she'd died before seeing their foundation's first clinic open. How he'd spent 5 years building everything they'd dreamed of, only to stand alone at the ribbon cuttings. "People think money shields you from pain," he said, staring into his tea. "It doesn't. It just gives you fancier places to hide." I found myself telling him things I'd never told anyone, about my sister who deserved better than what life had dealt her, about my dreams of going back to school, about the exhaustion that had become so normal I couldn't remember what rest felt like. "You know what's ironic," he said. "I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, and what I miss most is cooking ramen with Sarah in our studio apartment, when we had nothing but time in each other." "But you're helping so many people," I argued. "Your foundation is changing lives." His smile was sad. I'd trade it all to have one more day with her. One more ordinary Tuesday. The money, the success, it's hollow without someone to share it with. Dawn was breaking when we finally left the hotel. Daniel insisted on driving me home, and I was too tired to refuse. As we pulled up to my shabby apartment building, I felt embarrassed for the first time that night. "You don't need to walk me up," I said quickly. "I wasn't planning to," he replied, then added, "Would you have coffee with me sometime? Not as a donor or employer, just coffee." I hesitated. "I don't think I'd fit in your world, Daniel." "Maybe I don't fit there either." His honesty was disarming. Maybe we're both just pretending until we figure out where we belong. Over the next few weeks, coffee became lunch, became long walks through parts of the city I'd never had time to explore. I learned about his childhood in a small town, his scholarship to MIT, the garage where he'd built his first prototype. He learned about my mother, who worked 3 jobs to put me through nursing school, my dream of opening a community health center in my neighborhood. What struck me most wasn't his generosity, though he had that in abundance. It was how he listened, really listened, like my struggles mattered as much as his successes, like we were equals, despite the canyon between our bank accounts. "You're the strongest person I've ever met," he told me one evening, as we sat on a park bench watching the sunset. "You think I have it all figured out because I have money, but you have something I lost along the way." "What's that?" I asked. His answer would change everything I thought I knew about wealth, about struggle, about what makes a life worth living. "Purpose," Daniel said quietly. "You wake up every morning knowing exactly why you're fighting so hard. I lost that when I lost Sarah. Now I just have goals and milestones, but no real reason for any of it." His words hung in the twilight between us. I wanted to argue, to point out all the good his foundation was doing, but I recognized the emptiness in his voice. It was the same emptiness I felt on those rare moments when I stopped moving long enough to ask myself, is this really living? One Saturday afternoon, Daniel invited me to his home. I'd expected some sleek penthouse downtown, all chrome and glass. Instead, he drove us to a modest house on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by trees. Inside was comfortable but simple. Bookshelves overflowing, a worn leather couch, photos everywhere. This was our house, he explained. Sarah and I bought it when the company first took off. Everyone expected us to upgrade, but she loved it here. He picked up a framed photo of a woman with bright eyes and a wide smile, standing in a garden. She used to say homes are for living, not impressing. In his study, he showed me a spreadsheet, similar to mine, that tracked every penny of debt, but reversed. His tracked giving, millions to hospitals, research, scholarship funds. After she died, I thought if I could just give enough, build enough, it would fill the hole. He closed the laptop. It didn't. Later in the kitchen, as we prepared dinner together, he asked about my schedule for the coming week. I rattled it off automatically. Hospital shifts, bar shifts, 3 hours on Tuesday to do laundry, Sunday morning for grocery shopping. "And when do you rest?" he asked, his knife pausing over the cutting board. I laughed. "Rest is a luxury I can't afford right now." His expression grew serious. "Can I show you something?" He pulled out a small notebook from a drawer. Inside were columns of numbers, dates stretching back years. This was Sarah's life by the hour, during her last year. Doctor appointments, treatments, work meetings she insisted on attending even while on chemo. He turned to the final pages. The neat columns dissolved into a single line. Time left, unknown. The last thing she said to me, his voice cracked slightly, was, I would trade all our success for just one more year of time. I felt a chill despite the warm kitchen. But my situation is different. I'm working towards something. So was she. So was I. He closed the notebook gently. "Nia, what would happen if you cut back to just one job?" I explained the math to him. My sister's tuition, my loans, my rent, the numbers that ruled my life. He listened without interrupting. "What if there was another way?" he finally asked. "Not a handout," he added quickly, seeing my expression. "But what if your experience, your understanding of both worlds, could be valuable in ways you haven't considered?" Over dinner, he told me about the community outreach position opening at his foundation, connecting with the neighborhoods they served, designing programs that actually met people's needs. We have plenty of MBAs who understand spreadsheets. What we lack are people who understand real struggle. I was already shaking my head. "I'm not qualified. I don't have the right degree or—" "Sarah didn't have the right degrees either," he interrupted. "She had something better, lived experience and genuine empathy, like you." The offer was tempting. Regular hours, meaningful work, enough money to quit the bar, maybe even the hospital. But something held me back. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "If this is charity, or worse, if you're trying to—" "This isn't about romance or charity," he said firmly. "It's about recognizing value that the market doesn't. It's about what Sarah taught me. That time is the real currency, not money." I didn't give him an answer that night. Instead, I spent the next week in a fog, moving between my jobs on autopilot, his words echoing in my mind. Was I brave enough to change course after fighting so hard for so long? What would happen to my carefully constructed plan, my independence? Friday night at the hospital, I watched a terminal patient celebrate her 60th birthday with her family in the oncology ward. "No regrets," she told me when I brought her medication. "I worked hard, saved everything for retirement. Now I'd give it all back for more time." The same words, from a different dying woman. On my break, I found myself in the hospital chapel, not praying exactly, but asking questions of myself I'd been too busy to consider. Was I spending my life or investing it? Was financial security worth the cost of never being present in my own existence? I called Daniel from the hospital parking lot at midnight. "I need to understand something," I said without greeting. "You have all the money in the world. Why do you still seem so sad?" His answer was immediate, like he'd been waiting for this question. Because I made the mistake of thinking wealth was measured in dollars, not moments. By the time I realized the truth, the person I wanted to share those moments with was gone. That was the moment everything changed, not because he offered me a job, but because he offered me a truth I couldn't unhear. And the decision I made next would reshape everything. That Monday morning, I walked into my supervisor's office at the hospital and reduced my hours to part-time. My hands trembled as I filled out the paperwork, years of financial anxiety screaming at me to reconsider. But another voice, newer, clearer, reminded me that security means nothing if you're too exhausted to feel alive. 2 weeks later, I started at the New Horizons Foundation. My first assignment was evaluating their current programs through the eyes of someone who'd actually been on the receiving end of charity. I still remember the faces of the board members, most of them Daniel's wealthy friends, when I told them bluntly that their free clinic hours didn't work for people with 2 jobs, that their financial literacy program assumed resources their clients didn't have, that their well-meaning volunteers often spoke down to the people they served. "This is exactly why I hired you," Daniel told me afterward, grinning at their shocked expressions. "Sometimes wealth creates distance. We need bridges." The transition wasn't seamless. I kept my weekend hospital shifts at first, unable to fully trust this new reality. My spreadsheet now included savings for the first time, but I checked my bank account compulsively, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Old habits of scarcity don't disappear overnight, but slowly, other things began to change. I started sleeping more than 5 hours a night. I called my mother just to talk, not just to check if she needed money. I joined a community garden, planting tomatoes I'd actually be around to harvest. When my sister called with problems, I could listen fully instead of solving them quickly between shifts. Most surprisingly, I reconnected with myself, the woman who had dreams beyond survival, who once wrote poetry, who loved autumn walks and spicy food, and laughing until her sides hurt. She'd been buried under exhaustion for so long, I'd forgotten she existed. Daniel and I developed a friendship unlike any I'd known, built on mutual respect rather than shared circumstance. He taught me about navigating non-profit boards and philanthropic politics. I taught him about the realities of the communities we served. Together, we redesigned the Foundation's approach, creating programs that addressed actual needs rather than assumed ones. "You've brought the heart back to this place," he told me 6 months in, as we celebrated the opening of a 24-hour childcare center for hospital workers. "Sarah would have loved what you're doing. What developed between us wasn't the romantic fairy tale people might expect from this story. That would have been too simple, too predictable for 2 complicated people carrying their own forms of grief. Instead, we built something rarer, a partnership of purpose, a shared mission bigger than ourselves." A year into my new life, Daniel invited me to co-chair the foundation. "You've earned this," he said, sliding the proposal across his desk, "not because I like you, but because you've transformed our work." The salary was more than I'd ever imagined earning. My first thought was all the debt I could pay off, all the security I could finally claim. But then I remembered the spreadsheet in Daniel's study, not tracking what he earned, but what he gave. "I'll accept on one condition," I told him. "I want to establish a scholarship fund for healthcare workers who want to advance their education but can't quit their jobs to do it. People like me, who get trapped in survival mode." He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. Sarah always said true wealth was having enough to share. Today, 3 years later, my life looks nothing like it once did. I still live modestly, but by choice rather than necessity. I sleep 8 hours most nights. I take actual vacations. I've paid off my debts and helped my sister finish school. The scholarship fund has supported 37 healthcare workers so far. As for Daniel, he's still wealthy, still successful, still carrying the grief of his loss. But there's more light in his eyes now. He's found new purpose in our work, in using his privilege to create opportunities rather than just writing checks. We have dinner once a week, challenging each other's thinking, planning new initiatives, sometimes just enjoying the luxury of unscheduled time. The woman who once counted pennies in the grocery store now helps allocate millions in funding. The man who had everything except what mattered most has found meaning beyond money. Neither of us is fully healed. That's not how life works. But we're both more whole than we were. What I learned from Daniel wasn't that money doesn't matter. Of course it matters when you don't have enough. What he taught me was that money is meant to serve life, not become it. That working yourself to death for future security means having no life left to secure. That the currency of time is more precious than dollars, and love, not just romantic love, but purpose and connection and meaning, costs more than any amount in a bank account. I still keep my old spreadsheet as a reminder of where I've been. But now, next to the column tracking dollars, I have another one tracking something more valuable, moments of genuine living, and that, more than any number, is the measure of true wealth. If this story resonated with you, don't just like and share, take action. What's one thing you can change today that puts love before money? Comment below with your decision, and let's support each other in valuing what truly matters.